Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. My name is Stephanie, and I'm the current president of Native Daughters of the Golden West. And I hope everyone had a great breakfast.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just kind of give a brief, just kind of about what Native Daughters does. Native Daughters was actually established in 1886. Our local parlor here was established in 1899, so we've been a parlor here in Etna for 117 years. So, yeah, a lot of the other parlors throughout California, there's parlors throughout all California. Some of them have closed their doors, but we're still going strong. So, we do preserve a lot of California history, but a lot of local history. You'll see our plaques kind of all over town, all over Scott Valley. Recently, we've been putting them out at where the school sites have been. We put one down at the IOF Hall, the Pleasure Park Hall down here. Kind of everywhere. We help out with scholarships. We have scholarships that we give out every year. We have 2 students every year that get scholarships. We do a lot of fun things like this. We do California, or tea that we do historical things on. It's kind of hard to say. We do a lot of things. We do a lot of donating to the schools, to domestic violence. And besides doing all that hard work, we do have fun. We just recently went over to a little Native Daughters group, had a tour at the Forest Mountain at the hotel the Burtons own, so that was fun. And we also do get together, go to cabarets. So enough on that. We do have information in the back if anybody is interested. We have a lot of booths out today. So also we run the museum, and the museum is open in the summer hours from June until September. We're open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 3. A lot of things there. I do encourage everyone to go visit that. Other than that, I think I'm going to get ready and introduce you to Cheyusa Wend. She unfortunately was not California born, but she has done so much for the community. But we do, through Native Daughters, we have what's called the Roll of Honor Award, and those are given to people who do outstanding things throughout the community to help preserve local history. And so Cheyusa was our recipient from 2013-2014 award for helping preserve history and putting on and helping things today. So I'd like to introduce Cheyusa Wend.
Thank you. I've also been known to change history, so we'll see. Good morning. I hope a lot of you had breakfast already. It's a beautiful day. Couldn't ask for better. Hallie Daggett, First Lady Lookout, hired by the Forest Service. When she began her career at age 34 in 1913 at Eddy Gulch Lookout, every morning she would raise the flag. And so this morning, to begin this celebration, I would like to honor Hallie by asking Crystal DeRose and Nancy Hood and her staff. I'd ask them to escort Nancy, the fire lookout, to Hallie's front porch to raise the flag. Thank you, Nancy and Crystal. I want to begin by giving you just a brief timeline because Gail Jenner is going to share some history in a few minutes. All this, as you know, nothing happens by itself. It takes a great deal of work, and we are indebted immensely to Susan Mayfield. Where's Susan? She's hiding. She's over there. Okay. It was Susan that had the vision to have this day happen. So back in 1913 to 1927 at Eddy Gulch, Hallie Morris was the first woman lookout. And then after she retired in 1927, she moved to another log cabin at that she called Blue Ridge Ranch. And in 1948, she lived in a cabin across the river from the Sawyers Bar Ranger Station, and one evening she fell, and the ranger happened to be outside and heard somebody and ran over, and she'd broken her leg. So they took her to Wairika, and of course she couldn't ever go back to Sawyers Bar to live. At that point, I believe her sister Leslie, who had been the postmaster at Black Bear for a number of years, had already moved to Etna. If you know where Alice's big yellow house is on Main Street, behind there is another house. That's what was Leslie's house. And then in about 1951, the cabin was built that we see here now for Hallie. And I don't know if Jerry Reynolds is here today, but Susan talked to him the other day, and he said, oh, my grandfather, my dad, and I built that house for Hallie. And I thought that is really cool because I think his grandfather was Stoutenberg. And I thought, well, that's neat because he built down the alley that goes between Main Street and Frederick. He built Doris Jackson's house, he built Molly's house, he built my house, and he built Albert Elam's house. And probably, I don't know how many other in town. So she moved then into Etna, and from 1951 to 1964, she lived in this cabin, but down in the Main Street location. And then the property was sold, I don't know how many times. In 1993, the Holsinger family, who then owned the cabin, wanted it gone, so they donated it to the city, and a citizens group got together, and they were able to get a grant from the Forest Service. And in 1996 then, July of 1996, that's why we're celebrating this as the 20th anniversary of the cabin move. The cabin was moved to this spot. And then for 20 years, it was there. When I moved here in 1997, I'd go by and people would say, well, that's the Hallie Daggett Cabin. Okay, that's nice. I mean, I guess in my head I thought that was the cabin that was up at Eddy Gulch, but it wasn't. This was her final home place before passing in 1964. So it sat for 20 years, and Susan called me one day back in November and said, Cheusa, have you seen that cabin? And I said, well, kind of. And she said, we need to do something. I said, okay, I'm all in. What do we want to do? So in the research of getting pictures and learning more about Hallie's story, we discovered that the city of Etna had actually gotten a grant through the Forest Service. And part of that grant was that they were to maintain it. So it needed a new roof and new siding, if you've seen the woodpecker damage, and the porch needed some repair. It just needed a lot of help. So Susan and I went before the city, and they were gracious enough to honor that commitment that had been made 20 years before. And Charles Lincoln, is Charles here today? I haven't seen him. Okay. Charles Lincoln and his group of volunteers from the Lions have done an exceptional job. The city paid for all the materials, and Charles and the Lions donated their time. They put on a new roof. On the back side, you'll see the new siding, which matches the color almost perfectly of the rest of the cabin. And hopefully before winter, they'll finish out doing the rest of the new siding. And they fixed the porch, and then Jan Gaynor and Mitch worked on a brand new sign. If you ever saw the other sign out in front, you couldn't even see it because the plexiglass had gotten pretty bad. And then if you go to City Hall, I'm not sure, how long is that panel going to be there, Marilyn? Do you know?
I don't know, but I know it is a limited time.
Okay. There's actually 8 incredible, it's done in panels, big panels of Sawyer's bar life. And Jan Gaynor, where is Jan? Oh, there she is. Okay. Look for the tallest guy here, and she's standing next to him. Okay. She was one of the artists on that. And so anyway, it's displayed at the city. Go in and look at it. It's incredible. So I asked Mel if he would go and take a picture, because he has wide-angle lens, and he took the picture. And then we took some of the woodpecker wood from the cabin, and Serena and Drake Travis were gracious enough to make a frame for it. It just arrived this morning. So on the front of, if you go to the front of the cabin under the window, you'll see it framed. And that will then we're donating that to the city of Etna, so they'll have that picture there. And it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, of life in another time. So that kind of brings you up to speed. I want to introduce the mayor of Etna, Marilyn Seward. She would like to speak for a few minutes.
Wow, this is great. Good morning, everyone. It's
Morning.
a privilege to be here. I know there are some real speakers coming up, so I'll make this brief. There's just three things I want to say. Three subjects anyway. Number one is I want hats off to Hallie Daggett. She is one in a long line of strong women who have made Scott Valley what it is today. And many of those strong women are here this morning. And I want to thank Hallie and all the rest of you women particularly in this case, who have made equality a little bit more real. So that's number one. Number two, I want to say that I am so grateful to have had the privilege of living in Scott Valley for almost 49 years, come the 6th of August. What a blessing. And to live in Etna, by the end of my term in November, both Wendell and I will have served 28 years on the city council. And we've seen Etna grow and develop, and it's been a joy. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for that privilege. And the third thing I want to say is that thank God for the volunteers. This valley would not exist without volunteers. So how many of you have been in some kind of volunteer work? Raise your hands. Yeah, look at that. And many of you multiple jobs. Without volunteers, nothing would work. I mean, it's the library, it's the museum, it's the theater, it's the swimming pool, it's City Hall, it's the buildings, whatever it is. We owe it to all the ball teams, all the coaches, and all the 4-H leaders, all of the volunteers. What a privilege to be part of a community like this. I am so grateful to have been allowed to be part of it. What a wonderful celebration. I hope it goes really well. I want to say that I have grandkids, great-grandkids at home and by themselves, and I have to skip out. But thank you for letting me be part of this special day. God bless you.
So I want to introduce council members here to Diana Callahan. I saw Mitch. Where'd he go? Mitch is back here. And Eric Ryberg. And is Lori here? Lori Fleck? Okay. And I also want to thank all the Lions Club members that have put on this wonderful breakfast for us. It's a benefit breakfast that they are just now testing out their new trailer and the cooktops that were donated to them by a special man in our lives after the fire at the Masonic building a few years ago. Everything went up in smoke, so they're just now getting started. And I understand that hopefully this summer they will start doing maybe every now and then a pancake breakfast in the park. So this is kind of, let's see how this works out again with new equipment. So thank you all very much. Derek and Donnie and Fran and everybody over there that's helped out so much. We really appreciate it. What? Okay, now we have some special guests today. Where's Fred? Is Fred here? I want to introduce you to these people. We're not going to let them talk because they're like me. If you give them a microphone, we'll never get anything else done. But they'll be over here. They have tables, and they're happy to answer any questions that you have. So please grab all your questions and go over and just say hello and thank them for spending this Sunday with us. Fred Aloisi, come on, Fred.
Well, good morning.
I was introduced to Fred through Jeanne Goetz at the Forest Service, and Fred, for 35 years, has owned the Klamath Mill site where Hallie was born. And this man is an amazing wonder of everything about mining, the area up there. It's just incredible, the wealth of knowledge. So Fred will be over at the table. I just want you to see him so you know who he is.
Hello, everybody. I'll just look you over there.
And next we also have special guests. Fred told me about a book called Gold in His Veins, the story of Jeanne Daggett, and I ordered him a book, and then he got a hold of the authors, and we have the authors here today, Nancy Oliver and Rich Kelly. They've done incredible research into Jeanne Daggett's life. Peggy, yes?
They have also donated a book to the museum and to the library for us to read.
Wonderful, thank you. So this is Nancy and Rich. They have their table over there and some of their books, and just ask away on questions. I know some of you have heard about the what? Some of you have heard the story about the 1894 S dime. So we're going to have your questions over at the table, because there's both sides of the coin, as you would say, on that. They called it the ice cream dime. I want to also ask, how many people out there, I see Laura, who all is out there that used to be at one time fire lookouts? Laura Andrews, who else? Anybody else here? Okay. So Rich and Nancy will be at their table as soon as we're finished here. Thank you. And then throughout all of this research, I had the pleasure to meet Jeanne Goetz from the Forest Service, and she's sometimes you meet people and you feel like you've known them forever, and Jeanne and I just kind of correspond back and forth and come up with all these ideas. Jeanne, I want to introduce you so people know who you are. And Jeanne she has some people that she would like to introduce. And you'll see a big turnout of a lot of the Forest Service crew. Crystal DeRose is here, and some of her crew, and they have a big booth over there with the maps. So be sure and spend time and ask questions.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me be part of this day. I'm actually the Heritage Program Manager, or sometimes known as Forest Archaeologist, on the Klamath National Forest, and I do frequently get asked what that person does and what does an archaeologist do for the forest, and we do a lot of tasks, but it can be distilled basically to identifying historic properties and trying to prevent them from being affected both from natural causes like fires and floods, and also from potential effects of Forest Service activities such as timber sales and prescribed fire. And part of that also is preserving history, and in particular for today, the history of Hallie Daggett. And to that end, I did bring some handouts, so I too will be available for questions. I have some things from the Forest Service archives, an article that Hallie herself wrote in 1913, an article that was in the American Forester from 1914, and then letters from the district ranger to the forest supervisor asking him what to do with this quandary of a woman having applied for a job as a lookout. And then also his response at the end of the season, and it really is an eloquent letter discussing what she did and how well she did it and how impressed he was by her talent. But we do have forest, not just at the forest level, but at the district levels, we have district archaeologists. And the one in Fort Jones is Jason Coates, and I know Jason's here today. There he is. Here's Jason. So if you ever have questions, concerns, or if you're willing to share your history with us, you can contact myself at the supervisor's office in Wairika or Jason in Fort Jones. Ted McArthur. I don't know where's Ted. Oh, there's. I'm guessing a lot of people do know Ted. He's the district ranger at the Salmon Scott office, and he lives here in Etna. And last but not least, our forest supervisor, Patty Grantham, and Patty has a few words she'd like to say. And I just want to say again, thank you for letting me be part of this wonderful day.
So what a great turnout. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I didn't clear this with Chesa, but I am going to say a couple things, and it's because I feel, Hallie Daggett is so important to me personally. So I'm going to share a little bit from that letter that Jeannie just said that she's got copies of. That's really quite a letter. I would recommend you go over there and kind of snag one while there's still copies. But so the date was May 12th, 1913. The place was Sawyer's Bar in the rugged Siskiyou Mountains of Northern California. The letter was addressed to Mr. W.B. Ryder, supervisor, Klamath Forest. The writer was Mr. M.H. McCarthy, assistant fire ranger. His purpose in writing was twofold. First, to inform Mr. Ryder that W.R. McDowell, who had served so well as the fire lookout at Eddy Gulch Lookout Station during the fire season of 1912, had declined the invitation to serve in 1913. And the ranger was talking about the applicants that he had received for this job. And as Jeannie said, he was in something of a quandary. The first applicant, McCarthy's letter continued, was a man whose reputation for the various cardinal virtues that go to make up a desirable employee of Uncle Sam is not of the best. It's liable to run in warm weather. Concluded McCarthy, I could not conscientiously recommend him even in a pinch. The second applicant, wrote McCarthy, was a passably good fellow whose eyesight is reported to be not of the best, but who is also said to be one of the best rifle shots in the county, he having shot more holes in game laws than any other man in the salmon. For various other reasons, I should prefer to defer recommending this applicant until I really had to. The third applicant, continued McCarthy, is also no gentleman. So, of course, he went on to hire Hallie, and she served for many years. With great terrific performance up there at the lookout, and I think most of us are kind of familiar with the story from there. But the thing I want to leave you with is it's not lost on me that because we had somebody like Hallie, who was willing to actually apply for a position, to pursue that against some pretty formidable odds back then, and three, to serve with such distinction, that one of the reasons why I have my job today is because of her. Right. Thank you very much.
And that was one of the things that as I researched Hallie, I came to see that she applied for that job because she grew up in that area, even though she lived in San Francisco, and had that lifestyle. But she was a woman who lived her passion, and that passion opened up the future. So that was pretty incredible. And I skipped ahead on my whole thing here. I left out Gail Jenner, so you're probably wondering the whole history of her. For some of you don't even know Hallie. So Gail, do you want to come up? Gail and I share that we both received Roll of Honor awards for the Native Daughters, even though neither of us were born in California. So we are grateful for all of you welcoming us into sharing your history.
Yes, as I told the group that the night I was honored, I've never wanted to be a wannabe before, but I am a Native daughter wannabe. So, and I only lived out of the state for 5 months, but it was enough to disqualify me. What Susan asked me to share, not so much the details of Hallie's life, but in going through the Siskiyou County Museum and finding the photographs, which are in the cabin, so make sure you stop and really look at them closely. There was a myriad number of them, but we went through and found the ones we felt were most applicable to the cabin and to Hallie's role as a fire lookout. So what I'm sharing are quotes that she herself wrote about her life there and why she did what she did and some of the things she encountered. And Susan just felt that the quotes themselves actually painted the best picture of Hallie's life. So that's what I'm going to read to you, are these quotes. So she wrote about being chosen to work as a forest lookout. She wrote, I grew up with a fierce hatred of the devastating fires and welcomed the Forest Service force which arrived to combat them. But not until the lookout stations were installed did there come an opportunity to join what had been, up until then, a man's fight. And although, of course, as you've heard, Hallie and her sister Leslie grew up in Black Bear, the mining area, they also lived in San Francisco, and her mother was a very refined woman, and so they also attended schools in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, and we're really beautiful women. But her heart always remained in the forest land, and with her sister Leslie and her brother Ben, they had explored thoroughly the rugged mountains, and they all knew how to hunt, ride, fish, trap, and shoot. Hallie was an expert shot. She never foiled at taking down a bear, or in fact, one season she reportedly killed 4 mountain lions and a bear, but she wasn't necessarily, that was not her primary function. She was hired as a forest guard, which is what they called them then, at $840 a year, and went to work on June 1st. And she returned each June for 4 to 7 months out of the year. About the move to her mountain lookout, she wrote, "It was quite a swift change in 3 days from San Francisco, civilization, and sea level to a solitary cabin on a still more solitary mountain, 6,444 feet in elevation, and 3 hours hard climb from everywhere." From her lookout, she could easily see Mount Shasta. She could spot the Pacific Ocean and the miles of the forests, canyons, and ridges in between, including the Trinity Alps. And she could also see her neighboring lookout on Eagle Peak. She wrote, "I'd never thought of Klamath Peak as a possible home. One of my pet dreams had always been of a log cabin, and here was an ideal one, brand new the summer before, and indoors as cozy as could be wished, while outdoors, all outdoors, was a grander dooryard than any estate in the land could boast." Regarding her life at the cabin, while she didn't hesitate, as I said, to kill a rogue bear or wildcat, she wrote, "The birds and small animals filled the air with songs and chatter, coming to my doorstep for food, and often invading the cabin itself. I positively declined owning a cat on account of its destructive intentions on small life. A pair of owls proving satisfactory as mouse catchers, and being amusing neighbors as well. Several deer often fed around the evenings, and I would put salt out for them. There was one small brown bear near the spring, besides several larger ones, whose tracks I often saw on the trail. A couple of porcupines kept me from being lonesome by using various means to find a way into the cabin at night, mainly at the windowsills. Grouse and quail raised their young around my cabin door." She also wrote, she loved the constantly spreading fairy-tinted carpet of wildflowers to the very edges of the snowbank, and she watched them all summer, followed by the gorgeous autumn coloring on the hillsides. So she was definitely a lover of her environment. She also wrote, "One summer I had 7 pet chipmunks eating out of my hand. I raised one little waif on condensed milk, and later he would raid my pockets for corn or biscuit. All these animals being harmless, it had never been my custom to carry a gun in so-called Western fashion, until one morning I discovered a big panther track out on the trail, and then, in deference to my family's united request, I buckled on the orthodox weapon which had been accumulating dust on the cabin shelf, and proceeded to be picturesque, but to no avail, as the beast did not again return. However, you will note that on several of the pictures she is carrying her gun on her hip, even in her divided skirt, her culotte kind of skirt. The lifeblood of her work, of course, depended on the telephone, and you'll note that there's a couple of pictures in the cabin of her on the telephone. And she wrote, "With its gradually extending feelers through the district, it made me feel exactly like a big spider in the center of a web, with the fire for flies." And in that article that was mentioned, she wrote, "Even when the telephone wires were broken, and when for a long time I was cut off from communication with the world, I did not lose heart. And it was written about her that she was full of pluck and high spirit." She wrote often about the lightning storms, and she said, "There seems to be little actual danger from these storms, in spite of the fact that they are very heavy and numerous at this elevation. One soon becomes accustomed to the racket." And one reporter asked her, "What do you do in your spare time? Do you read?" And she wrote, "I get some time to read, but mostly I'm on the lookout for fires. There are other stations in the forest, and the men on duty are constantly on watch. The station that reports the most fires and reports them first gets the most commendation. Of course, that keeps us all on alert." And she did have a deck of cards and would play solitaire, although, as she said, she focused herself in keeping alert. Then in terms of tracking such storms, she wrote, "It requires a quick eye to detect in among the rags of fog which arise in their wake the small puff of smoke which tells of some tree struck in a burnable spot. Generally, it shows itself at once. But in one instance, there was a lapse of nearly 2 weeks before the fall of the smoldering top fanned up enough smoke to be seen." Her vacation was only 2 days off a month. And during that time, she usually would go back to see her family. And her sister Leslie came up to the cabin and would bring her supplies. And although all the photos that have a dog, people have assumed that it was her dog, she wrote that she did not have a dog, but that her sister would bring the dog. So I'm assuming that while she was visiting, those shots included that very famous dog. He's in quite a few of the shots. And then just to conclude, Mr. McArthur, the letter that we heard about, after she was done, he said that just in 1913 alone, Hallie was able to report 40 fires and fewer than 5 acres were burned. And he wrote, "Had one less faithful been on the lookout, it might easily have been 5,000. The first woman guardian of the National Forest is one big, glorious success."
Thank you, Gail. I was just informed, this is very exciting, the 2017 Siskiyou Pioneer, is that what they call them? Siskiyou Pioneer, the little books that come out every year. For 2017, it's going to be about lookouts of Siskiyou County. So that should be very exciting. So look for that next year. And we had hoped to have Jackie Denny come and speak because her mother was a fire lookout during World War II. And Jackie had a special gift to donate to the museum. So Susan Mayfield is going to speak on behalf of Jackie.
It's great to see y'all here. It makes me really happy. I was really in hopes that Jackie could be here, but she just couldn't. So she had written up a little dissertation on her mother, who was Allison Bam. She was a lookout from 1942 to 1970. And I'm just going to read it as if Jackie was reading it. I think her mother followed in Hallie's footsteps, and I think this is a real tribute that we have a Native daughter whose mother was also a fire lookout. In 1942, I was a teenager living on a U.S. Forest Service campground on the LaPorte Ranger District at Challenge on the Plumas National Forest. My dad was the district ranger. This was the first fire season after the beginning of World War II. The war took its toll on manpower. That season, our Challenge Fire crew consisted of mainly 16-year-old males. Lookouts were shy of bodies. There were 5 active lookout stations on the district. In the past, all manned by males. Some were young forestry students on summer break and some old-timers. A few of those were winos who would abstain for the fire season and then go on a big binge at the end of the season. They would live it up for a while on their little nest egg from their summer of spotting fires. There was no unemployment in those days. My dad was desperately in need of a person-to-man Pike County Peak, a lookout station near Challenge. He asked my mother to temporarily volunteer for the job. She obliged and became addicted to it. She could not be paid because my dad was the boss. After helping out for the season on the Plymouth, she spent the next 5 seasons as a real lookout on other forests. In 1948, she applied to CDF in Wairika and was assigned the Paradise Craigie Lookout. I believe it is still an active station and sits on a precipitous rock outcropping in Shasta Valley. Her next assignment was Bloomer Hill, a 60-foot tower with a small cabin near the base where she would stay at night. Her tour was 10 days working, then 4 days off. This lookout was only a few miles from my parents' home at Berry Creek. She continued on Bloomer Hill until retiring in 1970. I have never actually worked as a lookout, but have had a lot of exposure as to how they function. My mother was very dedicated and passionate about the job. She would have been extremely excited about the tribute that is being paid to Hallie Daggett. She would be happy to know that her green little insulated stool will be included in the collection of artifacts in Hallie's cabin. Jackie Bam Denny. I'm having a hard time with the name. It's spelled B-O-E-H-M, but it's German, and I was informed by Jackie that it's Bam, not Boehm, as I would have called it. So anyway, this is a little stool. It's quite heavy. You can check it out, that her mother used, and the idea of it was, even though the stations were protected from the static charge that the lightning gave I understand that there were copper wires that went down the all the way to the ground and then all the way down the mountain, probably 100 feet on 4 sides. When they were talking on the telephone, the landline, or the radio, the fire lookouts would stand on this little stool with the insulators on the bottom, hopefully to keep from being electrocuted. And so that was the idea behind it. Some say, oh, it doesn't work, but you be the judge. Maybe you would want to sit on it if you were in a violent, or stand on it if you were in a violent lightning storm up there on that lookout. So anyway, we wish Jackie was here, but we paid tribute to her and her mother, and her story is over on the picnic table along with the stool if you'd like to take a closer look. She has pictures of her mother and the catwalk, the tower she was at on Bloomer Hill, I think it is. So be sure and check that out when you have a chance. Thank you.
Okay, we're winding down here, and Tom McArthur, if he would come up.
Good morning. As we gather here in honor Hallie Daggett and the influence that she continues to have on this community and the Forest Service in particular, we'd like to take this opportunity to recognize another legend in her own right. Nancy Hood, if you could come up. So Nancy started her career with the Forest Service in 1959. She has worked, I guess that equates to 58 seasons as a fire detection lookout. She started on Dry Lake Lookout and has worked at a handful of lookouts in between then and now. She currently works at the Lake Mountain Lookout and has been there for almost 24 seasons this year. And what I have here is a recognition that she has, although it's 58 seasons, it's 45 years of service. And along with that comes a little recognition, a certificate that she can spend about $250 on some swag. As well as just that we just wanted to recognize the many years of dedication she's had. Nancy's been an excellent example and mentor to the lookouts we've had over the years, and I really appreciate her continued dedication and service.
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, that just about winds it up. This story, however, has no ending because the city, through that grant, will continue to provide money for maintenance for generations to come, honoring the life and wonderful service fire lookout, Hallie Daggett. She is truly our First Lady. Thank you. And I want the Lions still have lots of food over there, so if you haven't eaten breakfast, please go and enjoy breakfast. Spend some time looking through the cabin. Susan and her volunteers did an incredible job. It's absolutely beautiful. We all want to move in. And just look around, talk to people, and enjoy the morning. Thank you very much for coming.